Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us here on YouTube tonight. Welcome to the Columbia College Chicago Design Lecture Series for Spring 2022. My name is Ivan Bernetti, and I teach in and coordinate the Design Department's illustration program. Thank you very much to our chair, Duncan McKenzie, for making this lecture series possible, to Mimi Yu for technical assistance, and to Jay Myers for logistical support. Tonight, we present Denise Holmes, who in fall 2021 became an adjunct faculty member in the illustration program here at Columbia, and also had her work featured in the Illustration U Faculty Showcase. Denise is an award-winning children's book illustrator and educator living in Chicago, Illinois, with her husband, daughter, and tiny dog, Mochi. Her work's inspired by the magic and wonder of childhood and the nostalgic moments of growing up. Denise's illustrations can be found in over a dozen children's picture books, magazines, greeting cards, and art prints. Two recent children's books by Denise are the Montessori Toddler Activity Book and Fun with Food Toddler Cookbook, Activities and Recipes to Play and Eat. I hope adults can read that as well, because I would like to. Both of those were published by Rockridge Press in 2021. And two upcoming titles by Denise are Mirror, Mirror, Happy Faces from Macmillan, and Baby's First Words from Little Grasshopper. We'll have time for a Q&A session at the end of Denise's talk, so feel free to type your questions into the chat and we'll collect those, and we'll try to get to as many as we can. Please give a warm welcome to our guest, Denise Holmes.
All right, I'm here. Thank you for having me. Thank you, Ivan, and the department and everyone. Let me share my screen here. I have this presentation to show you. Okay, can everyone see this? Good. All right, so I am Denise Holmes. My pronouns are she, her, and I consider myself a children's illustrator, which means I get to draw lots of fun, cute illustrations all day. Tonight's lecture is called A Journey from Childhood to Publication, Process, Inspirations, and Current Projects. And this was a piece that I did when I was little, and I spelled my name wrong, and I'm still a pretty terrible speller. But I did go through my slideshow and made sure I spelled everything right, but fingers crossed I did. So a little bit about me. I am an illustrator, mostly for the children's market. I work mainly in publishing, so I'll do children's picture books. I do editorial work and licensing, and I also consider myself an educator. I teach like drawing workshops for kids and adults, and now I am lucky enough to be an adjunct professor at Columbia in the illustration department. So where it all started, this is me, 2 years old in 1983. I think it is a Dr. Seuss book, but it's the first time there is documented photograph of me holding a children's book. So I like to think something was sparked here at this moment. This is my first drawing of my mom, who is joining us tonight. Hi, Mom. I'm guessing I'm drawing her giving me a hug. That's what I like to think here. But I am lucky enough that my mom saved all my drawings from childhood, and I have recently gone through a lot of them, and I have some to show you. It's really fun to see. So these are some of the first books that I got to write and illustrate. You might recognize some. Denise and My Toys, The Fish Who Wore Jewelry, How to Cook. I did write that book. The Humps in My Bed, and My Best Book Ever Made, which I probably could have stopped right there because it was the best book I ever made. So as I was preparing for a lecture, this was a few years back, I was going through all this work that my mom had saved of drawings that I did. And I started looking at them, thinking about how similar they are to my work now. So I went through and I found a lot of similarities. I just must be interested in drawing the same things over and over again, or maybe there's something subconscious that I remember as a kid and I'm just redrawing it as an adult. But I thought the similarities were pretty interesting. So this is an image of a family and a recent illustration that I did on the right side. Here's me in a really pretty dress with lots of colors and a cake. And then on the right side is an illustration of a picture book I illustrated called If I Wrote a Book About You. And I thought how amazing that the cake looks so similar, and it even had the same amount of candles on each illustration. And now when I was drawing these images on the right, I did not know that these images on the left existed. Here's another one, image on the left. I must really like the color turquoise. I still use it a lot in my work today. An illustration of somebody named Annie with really 80s hair on top and all her earrings. Illustration of a crocodile that I did back in the day, and one recently on the right side. And then I thought how interesting that I'm still using the same color palettes and subject matters today as I was when I was little. I'm still drawing, I guess, at night with the light on over a table in my room. I was really pulling here. The colors seemed very similar from the past and current, but the one on the left says, "The flower is for my girlfriend." And the other alligator says, "I'm his girlfriend." And then I found this picture, which I believe was taken about 20 years apart. And it just was so interesting how similar it was. And I did not know this photo ever existed. So, and then I start thinking about, well, will my daughter be the same way? This is a drawing on the left of a book I wrote called All About Me. And then I found this illustration that my daughter drew. And I thought how strange that the dress looks so similar. She had never seen that book that I did. So we're going to go a little forward here to high school. I was lucky enough, I grew up outside of Detroit, a suburb of Detroit called Grosse Pointe, and I went to a high school that had a really great art program. So I got to take drawing and photography, and I took pottery. There was a metals class, communication arts, digital arts. So I got, to do all of it. And one of my favorite pieces was this baby board book that I made called 10 Little Babies. And then this Punk Planet Reimagined cover magazine that I did. So my year between junior and senior year, I got to come out to Chicago and do a summer course at the School of the Art Institute. And I took graphic design, and the TA in that program worked at Punk Planet. And I thought, you know what, this is exactly what I want to do. I want to move out to Chicago. I'm going to study graphic design, and I'm going to work at Punk Planet. So I applied to the School of the Art Institute of Chicago, and I got into the program in 1999, and I came out to study graphic design. And the first semester there, I was in the graphic design, the first year class, and the professor told us, none of you are ever going to end up being graphic artists. So I was like, what department am I in? What am I doing? I wasn't really into sculpture or painting or drawing. So I thought, I'm going to try photography. So this is a picture of me, not really sure what I'm doing, but I studied photography. And my final projects were photos that I took comparing my place in Chicago with my mom's place and kind of juxtaposing these pictures of her house and mine. And I was just, again, kind of comparing and contrasting, like, do I set up my place like my mom's on like a subconscious reason? Or, is this something that was passed down to me? Or is it just because I lived with my mom for 18 years and got so used to the way she decorated? So I was kind of exploring that concept in photography and taking these pictures. And I thought it was interesting how, I had this red tablecloth and she had this red wallpaper. And then my last project was where I took photos that I had of my mom, and I retook them in my surroundings with me posing as them using all objects that I had. And we had some similar ones as well, which I thought was really interesting. I even had like the checkbook box and the pine saw in the back with a paper towel. And this is another photo. And again, this is in my place on the right side and my mom on the left. And this was the last one. So that was photography in college. I graduated in 2003. And between then, 2003 and 2007, I did nothing art related, really. I worked desk jobs. I was a server at Dave & Buster's. I worked at the East Bank Club for a month. There was a few new restaurants that were opening, one called Green Ginger in Wicker Park that I worked at. And then I got a job in logistics, which is really opposite of anything artistic. And I was managing freight for Campbell's Soup for a few years. And then I couldn't take that anymore. So I applied for a job at a stock photography place called Panoramic Images in Evanston. And I thought maybe I'll sell stock photography and learn that business, and maybe it will spark something in me and I'll start making some art. So I did that. I did that for a year, and I learned how to talk to clients. I learned all the terms in licensing. I learned about contracts and how long they should be for, and what worldwide rights meant, and all that fun stuff. And then I decided that I was going to go and become a freelancer. Even though I had not been really doing much, I just thought, I'm going to give it a year. I save it up enough money, and if I can make it as an illustrator, I'm going to try it. And if I don't make it, I'll go back to work. So I was really determined, and I started doing drawings and making art prints and selling them on Etsy. And this is about the time when Etsy got really popular. Etsy started in 2005, and I started selling these prints in 2007. So these were some of the very first illustration pieces that I was doing as a freelance illustrator. And it was exciting. I think maybe I sold like 20 prints, but then I started trying to take on new projects and figure out digital art. During this time, I was just doing pen and ink and watercolor, and I didn't know how to use any programs. So I was trying to teach myself. And so from there, I taught myself how to use Illustrator and vectorize my work. And I was teaching myself a little bit of typography, kind of going back to my graphic design roots that I tried to do. So I was making wedding invitations, and I had a lot of fun doing that. And then I worked on creating some logos. There was a company called Lydia who designed websites around 2007, 2008. And I saw that they had a bunch of illustrators that they worked with who were making logos and illustrations for different websites. So I sent them an email and I said, I love your work. I would love to work with you if you're hiring. And they took me on, and I worked with them for about 4 years, helping to create logos. And it was a lot of fun. I got pretty confident at using Illustrator and figuring out my style of illustration. And during that time, I also was trying to figure out different ways to earn an income. And one of them was licensing. So I found this company called Paper Culture. And again, I sent them an email just saying I would love to create some illustrations. And they said, do you want to talk? And so we talked on the phone, and they gave me the opportunity to create some illustrations and license my work with them. And then I started creating paper goods. I bought like a really nice printer. I had saved up enough, and I figured out how to make art prints, and I was making greeting cards, working at selling them at craft fairs, Renegade Handmade. And then I tried to start wholesaling some greeting cards, and I got one in at Paper Source for a little while. But that becomes a lot of work when you start cutting and packaging and trying to get wholesale orders together. And during that time, I was also learning about different ways of passive income. And a friend of mine told me about creating these digital graphics, which are basically like clip art sets. So she helped me set up a shop and how I should make a contract. And I just created a bunch of different clip art sets and put them up on Etsy and Creative Market and selling that way. And so once I put them up, and then the money just kind of like flows in and I don't have to think about it again. The only way to really like make pretty good money on this is if you have a lot of digital graphic sets, but it is really helpful and I still make some money doing it. So between these clip art sets in 2007 and by 2012, I'm pregnant. I have a baby, Hazel, and I decide to go on maternity leave. And then during my leave, I get a life-changing email from an editor that says, "Dear Denise, I'm an editor with the well-established publishing house." I guess I can say it's Simply Read Books. And I was wondering if you would be interested in doing a book project with us. So I said yes, of course, and I was really excited. And pretty much this kicked off my career as being a picture book illustrator. So I like to think of myself present day to now as a children's illustrator. Thankfully, luckily from that book, I have worked on over 25 picture books. I was trying to count how many today. There's a couple that I'm working on right now, but it is at 25. So I worked in trade books, which are books that are sold at bookstores. I've done these 5. I've worked on baby board books and activity books and mass market. And mass market means picture books that are sold like at grocery stores, or you'll see them at Costco or Target. And then I also work on educational books, and these are like for textbooks or schools put together packages where there will be books for students in them. So I get to work on some of those. As well as picture books, I also teach online classes with business. I have 2 business partners. One of them, we teach trends workshops where we help people illustrators who license their work. We put together some trend reports of things that are popular and that they could base their illustrations onto license to companies. And I've done 2 different picture book courses, one foundations in picture books. And then last year during the pandemic, I started a membership site called Let's Make Picture Books that went on for about 14 months, where we created a workbook every month and an assignment for illustrators that were looking to break into the picture book market. It was a lot of fun. And I also teach in-person workshops for kids and their adults. Recently, I did a Draw a Gnome Home workshop. I really like gnomes. And I've done a Let's Draw Animals and a Let's Draw Characters workshop. And it's a lot of fun. And the kids are amazing. And they come up with so many creative ideas. I mean, just look at the taco dragon in the 3rd picture. I love it. I also get to do editorial work. I mostly work in children's magazines like Highlights, and I've been lucky to work with Bravery magazine, which I believe their next issue is their last issue, but they're a really amazing company to create illustrations for. And I still do licensing work for greeting cards. And I continue to make promo illustrations for my agent and personal work, just to keep working and keep making new work and learning new things and trying new techniques and keeping my portfolio updated. So a little bit about agents. I have been represented by 3 agents. I am a licensing agent and a children's book agent who just did strictly children's books. And I currently am represented by the Bright Agency, which is a pretty big agency. I believe they have about 500 artists that they represent. So they represent artists who write and illustrate children's books. They also have a licensing department. They do advertising, educational work, and also for TV and film. So they're a really wonderful big agency. And if you work with them, they will help you create artwork for the different departments, which is really nice. So I have some images of my tools that I use in my studio. This is where I get to work during the day. Some of my everyday tools are my trusty Draft-O-Matic pencil, my Pentel eraser. I like working with microns. All my sketchbooks are the Moleskine. And then I do a lot of my work on my iPad, and I have a handy little stand. If I don't use this, it really hurts my back. So I have this really handy computer stand that I use. Some programs that I really like are Procreate and Photoshop and Illustrator, and that's everything that I use to create my artwork. And this is my studio. It's the third room in our house, and it is surrounded with plants and lots of books and sketchbooks, and all the books that I've published are kind of sitting on my shelf here. So it's a really wonderful little space to work in. And I thought I would show some of my inspirations. I really love vintage children's books. Some of my favorite illustrators are James Stevenson. I really love this book, What's Under My Bed. The character, the story is about this grandpa telling a story to these kids. And I just love how the grandpa turns into like a little grandpa kid character. Of course, James Marshall is a big inspiration, Edward Gorey, Dick Bruna, Mary Blair, Arnold Lobel, and some contemporary illustrators I really like, Penelope Deligan, Grace Habib, Phoebe Wall, E. Katerina Trucan, Christian Robertson, Stephanie Pfizer Coleman, and Sabina Radiva. And then just stuff in my life is still constant inspiration. My daughter, I love old painted worn out signs, Pippi Longstocking, playgrounds with old toys on them. I like random street art, folk art, really old toys. And of course, my daughter's drawings are always a constant source of inspiration. And then I have some images of my process of illustrating children's books. So the first one I'm going to show you is Phoebe Sounds It Out. When you get an offer on a book and you accept it, it's really exciting when your image shows up on Publishers Weekly. You get this little blurb and you get to show the world it, and it's a very big deal. So this was my first one that I got printed in Publishers Weekly. I store everything in these archival boxes. Maybe one day, they'll be up in a museum. I don't know. I'm just storing them for now. So when you get a picture book, the first thing you receive is a manuscript, and sometimes you have to paginate it, which means you have to break apart the text onto the different pages of the picture book. So a picture book has 32 pages, and so you have to break apart each of the text and decide where it's going to go in the book. Now, sometimes the publisher has already done this, but every time I've done it, I've had to paginate the text. So you get the text and I read through and I start making notes. I underline important words and I start brainstorming everything that I can think of about the book. And then I just dive right in right away and I create a book dummy. So a book dummy is just where the whole book is laid out on one page and it's broken up into each spread, and I just go for it, and whatever first comes to mind, I put it down, and that is the first book dummy. Most of my books, I've ended up making like 3 or 4 versions of these until I get the right one. But after you make the book dummy, the publisher comes back and says, all right, we like this, let's change this, let's add this. So this ends up being like a bigger book dummy where we call them thumbnails. And this is the next round of thumbnails. And it ends up being a lot of work because it is 32 pages. So you have to make sketches for each spread, and you have to think about if it's going to be a full page spread, if it's going to be a half page spread, or there's going to be spot illustrations. So you're kind of thinking of a couple different things when you are working on a picture book, and you want the book to flow nicely. So you have to consider how the illustration is going to make the viewer turn the page and how it's going to make the viewer's eyes go across the page. So there's a lot of things to consider. And this is the next page of the thumbnails. And so while you're doing that, you're also trying to figure out what the character looks like. And Phoebe went through a lot of different revisions, and she ended up looking like number 4 on the right page. And then I do a character turnaround, so I get to know the character, and it becomes easier to illustrate her throughout the book. And I'm trying out different poses and different clothing. And she arrives. And once I think I've got her right, I will come up with a color palette and what I think would work well. And so this book actually had 5 rounds of thumbnails. This is closer to the end, but this is another round where it's just more refined. We got the right character in here. We have space for text, and it's easy to read and pretty clear. And so after all that, there's a couple different versions you can see on the right side. I can't quite decide which one's going to be the best. After that, and it gets approved from the editor, I can start final art. For this book, I did it with like a nib. I illustrated with a nib pen, and I scanned it in and vectorized in Illustrator. And then I used Illustrator to color it. And this is what the color looks like. And so while you are finalizing the illustrations, you then have to start thinking about picture book cover concepts. So I like to create a lot of thumbnails and give lots of ideas. So I shared about 11 different ones here. And they came back and said, well, let's try one where she's speaking a speech bubble. So then I, again, produced more thumbnails. And it starts to get more refined as we go. So the right side is me thinking about what the hand lettering is going to be. And then they wanted to try out different textures in the back. So I'm giving them more thumbnails. And then finally, after many revisions, we come upon a cover that ends up being the final. And then it gets shipped off and printed. And it comes out a year later after you turn everything in. And so I thought I would show you a little bit of process with a baby board book. I think these are really fun to do. They're really simple and really playful, and you can make some really cute illustrations since they're mostly for babies. This book is called Is This My Tale? And the board book series is a series of 4 with about 5 illustrations in each book. So they kind of just gave me the go ahead to go. They gave me a list of some animals that they were thinking of, and I just kind of went crazy drawing some animals. So there's a bunch of thumbnails. The whale, a hippo, the lion, and more. There's a dog, a cat, a zebra, a bear, a sheep, fish, and fox. And so they come back and decide which ones they like best. And again, I do another round of sketches where the thumbnails are just a little bit more refined. This board book's fun because there's actually like a fabric tail that comes off of it. So they kind of have to plan for where the tail is going to go. And I have to make sure that it hits a certain part in the book. And then after the sketches get approved, I get to go on to final art. And I did these in Illustrator. So there are vector illustrations that I colored in Illustrator and added some textures. And then it gets published and it comes out a year later again. And then I have one last book to show you my process. This is what the process is for like an activity book with a lot of illustrations. So this one's called Mindfulness for Little Ones. So when I got asked to do this book, they wanted me to work on the cover first so that they could get it up on Amazon first. And so they had 3 different ideas. They wanted me to try cloud gazing, magic water, where they're like playing with dye and water and then feeling faces where they're like making paper plate faces. So I came back with a bunch of these little thumbnails. They're really rough, and that's what I sent them. And I also sent them some character sketches that I was thinking of for the cover characters. And they come back and tell me which ones they like. They actually liked 3 of them. So I refined the sketches a little bit more. And I'm leaving space for where the title and the subtitle should go. And they ended up liking the cloud gazing, and they wanted some color palette suggestions. So I gave them that, and then they put it all together, and the cover gets done first. And then after that, I start working on the interior illustrations. Now this book had 30 interior spot sketches. So just like a tiny little illustration on the page. So I had to come up with, I think there was about seven characters throughout the book, doing different mindful activities. So this is the second round of sketches that I sent them. All of these. And then there was also chapter openers for the activity book. So this is like a full page, like a half page spread. And the chapter on one, it says like chapter 1 on one side and then the illustration on the other. So I sent them 2 ideas each for each of the chapter openers. And then I get to go to final art, and I created these illustrations in Procreate. It was the first picture book that I used Procreate with, and I figured out a fun new process that I really liked, and I continue to work the same way today. And then it gets published, and you get a copy of the book and you get to hold it in your hands, and it feels very satisfying. And then I just have a few more little process illustrations to show you how I create them. I'll come up with like a thumbnail. I'll have my daughter pose so that I can try to figure out the right proportions, and then I finalize. And then I also like to experiment a lot, especially with Japanese brush pens. They're really fun and they create a lot of texture. So this is just a little process of how I created this Earth Day illustration. I used the brush pen and created these giant illustrations, and then over them using a light box, I have like the Sharpie marker, Sharpie pencil that I used, and I created the lines. And then I scan everything in and I recolor in Photoshop. And I really think it's a fun way, even though it looks pretty much like the way I create digital work, there's something really satisfying about using the brush pen. And so I currently am working on a few baby board books. This one called Baby's First Words was just published and released this month. So they're all baby's first words: uppies, pick me up, K me or carry me. In next December comes out this book that I got to work on with Macmillan called Happy Faces. It was a lot of fun to make. And then I'm real excited because this is a book that I'm currently working on, and I saw it was up on Amazon, so I can share the cover. It's called I Really Love You, and it's with Simon & Schuster. I'm really excited about it. It should be coming out next December. And then while doing all this and teaching, I am also working on writing and illustrating my own picture books. I currently have 2 that I have written and illustrated that will hopefully go out on submission soon. And I have a few other ideas, but these are all done and they're ready to go to publishers. And that's all I got. Stop sharing this. All right.
I was muted there. I was just saying thank you very much for sharing all that.
Yeah.
Looks wonderful. So much there to unpack
Right.
that I want to ask about. But I'd like to open it now to our audience out on the ether, the internet.
Right.
And I should be receiving some questions in my chat window that I will then relay to you.
All right.
I mean, I have one. While we're waiting for that, I can ask you
Sure.
one. I'm just amazed at how many projects you're working on, and it looks like a lot of them must overlap. So I was trying to imagine what your
Yes,
calendar looks
yes.
like.
So they do. I think at most I can work on two picture books at a time. If I do any more than that, I'll go crazy, or the books will all start looking like each other. So my cap is two books at a time.
I was going to ask if you had any tips. A lot of our students, one of their challenges, I think, is time management, at least in the classes they teach.
Mhm.
They often, I ask them to write about a lot of their thoughts on some of the articles in the book we use to introduce them to illustration. And a lot of them will say like, well, time management is not my strong point. And it seems like you are really good at time management. If you're able to juggle two books and now teaching, having a family, do you have
Mhm.
any tips or tricks or an app that you use or a sketchbook kind of process?
Yeah, I do a lot. So I have like, of course I have my planner. I'll show you like a little page. So like, I have these like, I just do these simple squares right here. And I have this amazing timer from Amazon, and I just do it in 25-minute increments. So I'll try to work on three things a day, and I'll just set a timer, 25 minutes, take a break, come back. I'll do my next thing, 25 minutes, take a break, and then my third thing. And then if I have more time, I'll go back to the first thing. I know I'm not going to finish a whole thing in one day. So I just have to take it piece by piece every day. Does that make
So
sense?
yeah, it does. And now we're starting to get questions, but just to follow up on my own question,
Yeah.
and I'm taking notes myself on how,
Oh,
I'm
good. Oh,
terrible
good.
with time management myself. So when you say you
I
break
just
it
like the
down,
simplest. Yeah. Go ahead.
when you break it down into three things, are there the three different projects or three different things you've
I
identified in
mean,
one
yeah, it
project?
depends on like the main things. Like I have to plan like my lectures for the week. So I'll give myself like 25 minutes each day to work on those. And then books. So I just finished a book and turned it in last Tuesday. I do work down to the last minute. I will admit I do procrastinate a little, which it works for me because I know my process. I know I can get it done. But yeah, I'll just spread it out, do like 25 minutes, take a break, come back to it if I have to. But if I just try to sit down and finish it all in one day, I can't do that. I have to break it up.
Well, it doesn't sound like procrastinating to me. Believe me, I know procrastination.
Okay.
You sound very organized and methodical, and I think that's great. All
Thank
right,
you.
so I'm starting to see questions from our
Okay.
audience. Braden Long, and I apologize if I mispronounce anyone's name. I'll do my best.
Right.
Where are your books for sale? You said you had 25 of
Yes.
them and a couple
I know,
more on the
right?
way.
It's random. So a lot of the baby board books I did are with a Belgium company. So they're not for sale here in the US, unfortunately, but like they're on Amazon. I saw one of my books at Paper Source recently, which was really exciting. You know, not many of them are with a really big publisher, so they can be kind of hard to find. But you know, Amazon, you can always ask your local bookstore too.
Well, I heard Macmillan and Simon and Schuster, and a few,
Yes.
those are
Yeah.
pretty big publishers. So I
They are.
think people will.
I'm very excited. They have not come out yet, so when they do, they will be hopefully available at the big bookstores.
Great. All right, so we have one. It looks like from Buck Hoy. I hope I'm getting that right. Let's see. How did you get into education?
Yeah. So I mean, like teaching at Columbia, I'm assuming, right?
Well, yes, that's
Or
part of it.
just
But you also
teaching in
said
general.
you said you do workshops for kids, and you've done
Yeah.
that sort of project where people can do online learning how to do children's books or editorial. So
Yeah.
anyway,
Luckily, I've been asked a lot. Like I've just kind of been at the right place at the right time. So I know my first business partner, she was helping me make these clip art sets. And she's like, I'm going to teach these online trends workshops for licensing artists. Do you want to co-teach with me? So, I mean, I can't pass up that opportunity. And from there, just like building relationships with other artists and people. My in-person workshops, I met these really wonderful people who started this place called Good Manor, and they were like a performance place, and they had space and asked if I wanted to teach some drawing workshops. So they helped me promote them, and that's how I had done them before the pandemic in person. And then this summer I did like a kids gnome home drawing workshop at like a mini street festival that was put on by somebody who had followed me on Instagram and asked if I wanted to teach a workshop there. And then Columbia, I am friends with a lot of people who teach there. So it's just, networking and talking to people and meeting people and getting your work out there.
that sounds great. I think you've stressed the importance of community, right? That artists
Yes,
are part of
very
a
much
larger
so.
community, and that could lead to opportunities. And yes, I mean, part of it is waiting, people come and ask you things, but you also have to put stuff out there, make the
Yeah.
connections, and be an active artistic community member, right?
Yes,
And you
yeah.
have a much better chance of people coming to you because they
Yeah,
see your
yeah.
work. Nicole Lesney asks, how did you go about finding an agent? And I noticed you said you had 3 different ones for different purposes.
Yes. So my first picture book agent I found through, because I was searching through, I always look at other artists and who they're represented by. And there was this artist named Tuesday Basin that I followed, and I really liked her work. And she was represented by an agency called To Go To. And so I just emailed and I said, I really admire the artist that you represent. I was lucky because I had published a children's picture book. So she took me on because I did have a little bit experience, but I just sent an email asking would she represent me, and she responded back and said, let's have a chat. And so I was with her for 5 years, and I felt like I was ready to go with a bigger agency, and I left and applied to Bright Agency and got to work with them. But in between that, I got a licensing agent. And I tried to do just like licensing for a year, but I really like picture books. So I left doing licensing because they do require like about 12 new pieces of artwork every month. And then they do also like it's called Blueprint or Surtex, these like licensing shows. So they'll go and take like portfolios of illustrations. And so you have to create extra work when there's a licensing show. So it's a lot of work.
Yeah, I can imagine. I always go into teacher mode because I get a lot of similar questions in classes. So I think you've explained it really well that to know what kind of agent you would like to work for, you have to be interested in the work of other illustrators and then do a little bit of research. And so you sort of have to have that passion for illustration and other people's work, and that could lead you then to discover people you can work with.
Yeah, definitely.
Alexis asks, how do you figure out the page sizing for picture books and book covers, or does that not matter when sketching and drawing the illustrations for picture books?
Oh, it matters. Yeah, no. With my first few books, the publishers just said, pick a size that you want the book to be, which, I mean, I was naive. I didn't know. So I just picked any random picture book size I could. But publishers do tell you what size, they generally tell you what size the picture book's going to be. So you kind of have to use the size that they request. There's only like a few sizes. I mean, it's either like landscape or portrait or square. So, and then baby board books they'll send you like a template that they want you to use, because usually there's like special things they add on, or there's I do have this one. Hold on. This one with Macmillan, I did get a copy, but it has like a mirror in it. So, you get a template and you have to work around the mirror.
Yeah. I know that I would just go to bookstores and just measure stuff, right?
Yeah,
Just to
yeah,
see,
there you
and
go.
you're right. There's basically a few formats, and then there's some changes in size, but the proportions you mentioned are the main ones, right? It's
Yeah, yeah.
long, tall, or square.
But I know
Um,
like there are some random ones that people do. Like there's some giant books or there's some tiny ones, depending on the text, I suppose.
So in the first dummy, the first few dummy pages that you do the layouts, I should say.
Yeah.
I mean, those are small, so you're not figuring out the exact proportion of how much space
Correct.
you need. But then by the time you get to thumbnails, I noticed that you really are thinking about the exact positioning of the characters and the background elements and props in relation to the edge of the page. So it looks like you
Yeah.
get to that pretty quickly in the sketching process.
Yeah, pretty much from the start, I have to be considering all that, where the illustration is going to go and the text and how it's all going to flow together. So what I'll do is I'll like make an Illustrator file in Adobe Illustrator of the correct size of the book, and then I'll make like a little template and then put that into like an 8x10 document and print it out and draw over it. So I know exactly what size it's going to be when it enlarges.
Sounds
If
good.
that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. It does. Snappy asks, looks like Snappy Star or asterisk. When you're getting into the industry, is it easier to start making your own content, or is it easier to start off illustrating books for others? And basically, how do you start out?
Right. So I will say there is a wonderful society called the Society of Children's Books Writers and Illustrators, SCBWI. And for anyone looking to get into publishing, they're going to want to join it. There are student memberships, so it's a little cheaper to join as a student. As a non-student, I believe it's about $85 a year, and they are a wonderful society. They do conferences, they do like little workshops, they have regional member groups. There's one here in Illinois that's really wonderful. And then twice a year, they do a conference, one in LA and one in New York. And that's where you meet art directors. You put your portfolio out there, and they have lots of fun workshops for you to attend. There recently was one, I think it was last weekend, the New York one. It was virtual, but the art directors and the editors open up their email addresses for people attending the conference, and you can send your portfolio and get it in front of people. And then you can also sign up for portfolio reviews from whatever editor or agent attends. So that really is one of the best ways to get kind of a start into the publishing world, to get your work in front of people.
Yeah, and for our students that didn't catch the acronym, could you repeat it for everyone so they could write it down?
SCBWI. And it's really lovely. I actually got asked this year to be a mentor for an illustrator in Chicago who wanted me to mentor them in children's picture books. So they do a lot of really wonderful things in the community.
Again, the importance of community.
More community, that's all. That's what it is. You got to know people.
Nicole Lesney has another question. Can you explain the licensing part of your work some more? I was a little confused. Well, they just wanted to.
Yeah. So
you went through quite a bit of material quickly, so they just wanted a little bit more of information on that.
Yeah, so licensing is kind of like where a company will rent your illustrations for manufacturing. So you'll be approached by a manufacturer, let's say like TJ Maxx is a really big one. They'll see one of your illustrations, and they will ask to license it for a certain amount of time, and they'll license it for a certain product, like let's say a welcome mat. I think that's pretty common. So you will either get like an advanced payment, and then after a certain amount of time, however many sold, you'll get royalties from that. So that's what licensing is.
How do they pay you? same person is asking.
Yeah,
So they really want to do some licensing, right? Is it
it
based
is. I
on
mean,
commission or is there a contract involved?
there's
Or both?
definitely a contract. Yeah. So you can license the same illustration, which is cool. You can license it in different markets. So you could do like a greeting card, you could do fabric, you could do, home goods is really big. So yeah, you can, you'll get a contract for each one of those. And then they pay you like quarterly royalty payments, depending on what kind of contract you signed. Sometimes you'll get offered like a flat fee, or sometimes just the advance.
Yeah, I've heard they have conventions, or they used to pre-pandemic, for people doing surface design specifically, and a lot of that work is
Yeah,
licensed.
they're really cool. They're in the big one is Surtex in New York and Blueprint. And there's some European ones as well, but you can sell like licensing art and patterns, surface design patterns, and get matched up with different manufacturers and companies.
I'm going to ask this. I'm sure there's a student that probably has a similar question. So a lot of these, it looks like you're contacted and asked to provide kind of particular illustrations for particular markets. But have you had cases where, I'm sure you have, it's a rhetorical question, where you've already done something for something else, a drawing for something else, and then someone asks, can we license that? Or could we use that? So is it sometimes that they're asking to license something you've already done, perhaps for another project?
Yeah, so you can license it again as long as it's for something different. So it can't be licensed for the same thing while your contract is active. So most licensing contracts last between 1 year to 3 years. So then you could potentially license it for anything after that.
Yeah, no, great to know.
Yeah.
Heidi Gelpi, I am currently working on a children's illustration written and illustrated. How should I go about publishing? Do we know if Amazon self-publishing is good?
I have not tried Amazon self-publishing. I don't think there's any harm in trying to self-publish a picture book. It teaches you the process and how to go about it and how to promote it and how to make the whole picture book. So, I mean, definitely try that. But again, I would recommend the Society of Children's Book Writers and Illustrators, and just trying to connect with other illustrators who are working in the industry and seeing what they do and how they've put their work out there. But the society is a really good place to start if you are interested in illustrating and writing your own picture books.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that most artists actually are pretty generous in terms of sharing information, and sometimes just reaching out to somebody, and especially there's already a group that has meetings and conferences and events. It's a great way to just ask and just to see how other people have done it, or and everyone has their own path through their illustration career. But
I will say the editor who saw my work, my first picture books, found my work on Pinterest. So get your work out there and put it everywhere, and you never know who's gonna see it.
Great advice.
Yes.
Kennedy Holman asks, I've heard recently that book advances, at least for graphic novels, pay out the last payment when the book is published. Has that been something you experienced with your work? So I guess they're asking kind of,
how do you get
maybe how do you get paid for these things, right? And
there's
similar for any kind of book.
Yeah, even like licensing, it's very similar. So there are a few different ways. Most of the baby board books that I have worked on are just like a flat fee. So you get paid a flat fee. Generally, you'll get like half when you sign the contract, and then the other half when you turn in the final files. For the trade picture books, you get an advanced payment, which is like a certain amount. Generally, they can be anywhere from like $5,000 to $30,000. It's really wide. It's a big range. So you'll get your advance, and then usually again half when you sign, and then the other half when you turn in the files. And then after it gets published, you should start earning royalties. I've only earned royalties on one book so far that I have published out of the 25. And then my activity books are just flat fees. There's no royalties on those. So you get paid, again, half upon signing, and then half the rest when you turn in the work.
Yeah, those are really good answers. I mean, I'll just add that that's the most typical, is the sort of half and half.
Yeah.
I've also had where it was in thirds, like a third when you sign the contract, a third when you hand in the files, and then a third when it actually comes out. So I've had that situation.
Nice.
So that could happen.
Yeah.
But I think the half and half is typical. And I think a lot of the advances are set up so that obviously the publishers don't want to have to do all that accounting every year. So they try to give you an advance that will probably cover your royalties. But if you have a big surprise hit book, then you'll be collecting royalties for a long time. But the way just to explain it, how advances are set up. But I think it's pretty similar for graphic novels and children's books. Projects.
Although I think graphic novels gets paid. They're paid pretty well right now, I believe, because they're a hot commodity.
You have a lot of word balloons in some of the imagery. So do you kind of see your work as being kind of a crossover? I mean, a lot of children's books seem like they use a graphic novel sort of format.
I'm really interested. I need to take the graphic novel class at school. I'd love to. I'm not really sure about my writing. I don't know how clever or how interesting it would be, but I would love to, definitely.
Well, I'm sure it'd be great. And you've written 2 books, so it's but
they're they're 30 words. So
you just have to draw a word balloon around the words, and then it's a graphic novel.
There you go.
Alan Abarca asks, how do you decide what drawings or works you show in your portfolio? And this is a very common question for our students. Like, what do I put in my portfolio?
I know, that's a good one. So definitely put in images in the market that you want to illustrate in. So if you want to do picture books, make sure that the work that you're showing is picture book work. Or if you want to do licensing, make sure that you have images that would work well for licensing. So surface design and hand lettering, like that kind of stuff. But yeah, I would say your portfolio should have 10 to 16 of your best images in the market that you want to work in.
That sounds good to me, or multiple markets, like you said.
Yeah, you can separate it to multiple markets for sure.
Braden Long has another question. Who is your favorite Peanuts character? Assuming you have a Peanuts favorite, but
who's the one who's with the blanket and it's always dirty? Is that Pigpen or?
Linus has the blanket, the security blanket, and Pigpen just a cloud of dust.
Okay, I think it's both of them combined are great Peanuts characters.
That's the last question that I've received through the chat. Well, I spoke too soon. Zahi Rains asks, how do you deal with burnout? And are there any other projects you have planned for the future?
Yeah, burnout's a big one. Luckily, because I don't get the chance to sit and work all day and ponder, because I do have, to get ready for teaching or do my book projects or take care of my family. I don't really have time for burnout. I just have to focus on the work. But there was a time when my daughter was little and I was watching her during the day and I had to work on everything at night. And that really got to me. So it was about 5 years of illustrating from 8 p.m. to midnight. And I got really burnt out doing that. So I recommend having a set schedule during the day when you're out of school, if you can, and not working beyond that because you'll just burn out. And then not scrolling through Instagram all day will will give you burnout if you do that too much. I try to really limit that, and that helps. And for the future, yeah, just to make more books, and I would love to write and illustrate my own.
Is that kind of your dream project then, right
Yes,
now?
that is I feel like it goes step by step, like getting a book published and then getting to teach definitely has been a dream of mine. And so my next one is writing and illustrating my own books.
That sounds good. And then I'm just trying to see if we have more questions. Maybe I'll give it another minute just in case there's some last minute ones. I think oh, here's one. Chris Arnold, our colleague, fellow teacher, you have accomplished so much. Oh, what is the dream project that you have not done yet? I know you just mentioned you did actually write and draw the books. You're just looking for
Yes, I want to get
to publish.
Yeah.
Anything
I'd
else?
love to do like, yeah, definitely like a fabric collection with a fabric company. Definitely would love to do that. So maybe I should start working on some surface design patterns in one of my time block schedules of 25 minutes.
I think that's a great technique because it's a doable amount of time. And then you get to take a break. And then if you really feel inspired, you could go back and do more, but at least you get that solid. You can do a lot in a short time if you're really intently focused.
You're focused, yes. As long as your internet is not on and you're scrolling or shopping.
Do you keep, well, you work mostly on the computer. So do you find it tempting to go to another window and start looking at Instagram or other emails, etc.?
It's very hard. Yeah, I just have to like turn off the Wi-Fi and do it. Otherwise, I will scroll. It's very easy. Or, I'll chat with my colleagues on Slack and that'll just start a whole thing. But yeah, I have to turn it all off and just focus just on the work for that time block.
That sounds like good advice. I'm going to try to follow that myself.
Oh, good.
Yeah, I have you can't see it, but my drawing table is just to the side of me and the computer is right there. And it's very tempting to stay in front of the computer and away from the drawing table. So I think you've done an amazing job presenting your work and explaining it and answering all the questions we received. It's been a real pleasure to talk to you and see your process. I found it really interesting that you'd say things like where this is really rough, and I look at it and I think, what? That's so clean. How can you call that rough?
Oh, yes. I am guilty of having clean thumbnails. I know it is. Those are rough, but they are clean roughs.
Well, I wouldn't say it's anything to feel guilty about. It's enviable, and I certainly I envy your ability to do that. So
thank you. I appreciate that.
I think this is a good stopping point. Thank you again for presenting your work and showing us your process. And I love seeing the childhood photos and childhood drawings. I think the key to understanding ourselves is always in those years that really shape us. And as you said, it's very surprising sometimes that we revisit things and we don't even realize we're doing that. So thanks for being so open and sharing all that.
Yeah.
I want to thank everyone that also stopped by tonight to watch us on YouTube. And thank you again, Denise, and good night. Good night to all. Thanks again.
Thank you.